Welcome to the Andrew D'Angelo podcast.
Constant Constance. Each week, Andrew, renowned jazz saxophonist and brain cancer survivor, invites us to look at the many worlds of his guests, with conversations that cover all the arts, human resilience, a little bit of politics, and a lot of humour.
You can't fail to have a fantastic time.
That's been my little thing I'm doing right now. Okay, so I'm here today. Welcome everyone with my, she is my friend, Maya Lederer, and she is the daughter of two very longtime friends of mine, Jeff Lederer and Maya Rose Lederer. And I basically have known Maya since she was in the womb. I'm not sure I actually knew your parents at that time, but let's just go with that. Like you were pretty gosh darn young.
Pretty
right?
much, just a thought in their minds.
One tour away from impregnating. Never mind. Sorry. All right, that was off the rails.
Oh no, I'm here.
And Maya is she's obviously beautiful and amazing, and I wanted to call you a budding chef, but I think at this point, even though I actually haven't eaten that much of your culinary creations, I've only had a couple.
Yeah.
I would assume that you're pretty much a full-blown chef at this point. You can refute that if you want, but
I will refute that because quick tangent about the word chef, since we're getting into it. You don't get to just call yourself a chef. That's kind of how the culinary world works. When you become an executive chef, the title and just the word chef is a huge deal. It's a really big deal because it took years and years of working up from being a dishwasher to a line cook, working through all the levels. Then you get to call yourself chef. So something that bothers me, and I used to be guilty of this, is like people on Instagram that put the word chef in their handle or just call themselves a self-proclaimed chef. It really, if you've been in the industry and if you see the struggle of working your way up, you're kind of like, this person just called themselves a chef. So I consider myself a cook. I do not call myself a chef. I am not a chef. I could be, but it would take probably like 10 plus years. That's the dedication it takes to call yourself a chef. So that's one thing that kind of like bothers me sometimes about people online that are just like, I'm a chef. I'm Chef Daisy or, whatever, just throwing the name chef in their title.
There's not, there's not something that happens where you get a certificate, like when we graduate college or whatever,
right?
Or where somebody says, I, adorn you as Chef Maya or whatever you want to call yourself. You have to earn your.
Yes. I would say once you become a sous chef, which is kind of like the second in command in the kitchen, people start calling you chef. Then you're like, okay, you're a chef. If you're creating recipes for the restaurant that are your recipes, you're a chef. That's what it takes. Not graduating from culinary school. You're still a baby. If you just have a culinary school degree, you're not a chef. That doesn't make you a chef.
Okay, fair enough. So Maya's humble and doesn't call her a chef yet. And then we know when somebody says Chef Ramsay, that's pretty serious business.
That man has worked his ass off doing every position in the restaurant. So yes, he is a chef. He gets to call himself a chef.
Would you mind if I tell you an anecdote, and I can always take it out if it's disruptive. Yeah. And this wasn't in my plan, but it just came when I was 16, and I lived in Seattle. My parents said, "You need to get a job," right? I mean, pretty classic. You need to work, blah blah blah. So I got a job at this place called the Little Cheerful Cafe as a dishwasher. Great name. Your dad and I and our friend Matt Wilson, the drummer, joke about it a lot. The Little Cheerful Cafe. What a great name. So I was a dishwasher in this cafe, more of a diner. And one day, the cook, in this case, not a chef. What is that called? Quick, fast order?
A line cook.
Line cook. Yeah. There was one and he was sick, and they said, Andrew, you have to take over the grill. And I'm like, I don't fucking know how to. So I went from what's that saying? You went from the flames into the fire. There's a saying.
Yeah, just get thrown into the fire. Everyone does. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I was dishwasher, and then I'm head line cook, short order cook. That's what we called it back then. That's the term. So I'm making eggs and bacon and these pancakes and I was making them. They were the size of the plate. So, and all these college kids were coming in. They're like, D'Angelo, man, you got to go down to the Little Cheerful. He's cooking up a storm. And I got yelled at for giving out too much food and hash browns and, because I was cooking these, like.
Not important.
But I held that gig for about a year at age 16. And my whole family's like, what? Wait, what? And dudes, especially young college kids from the University of Washington were, sliding me these really big tips, especially for the 1980s, like $10 here and there. And I was making really good money, but it was, it sucked. Like that's called back of house, right?
Yep, that's right.
Holy shit. And when you have all these tickets up and you got to make all of these meals for people and they're like cranky and it's morning, they want their pancakes or whatever it is, they're over easy eggs and you cook them too much and they send them back. And I was like, I want to work and make money, but not this hard,
Yeah.
And so one thing that I'm fascinated by and wanted to ask you, which is not on our list of things to talk about, but is right now you're front of house at a restaurant. You're basically managing it, right?
I'm not a manager, but yes, pretty much. Yes, that's what I'm doing. But I'm technically the assistant to the owner is my title. But yes, I do. Yeah. Managerial things. Well,
I saw your sister Hallie on the street the other day, as I think I told you, or on her stoop. And she said, you got to ask her about what it's like to manage, the restaurant. Well, she basically is managing it. And that's hard. Front of house, management, never mind with COVID. I mean, this must be, and this will transition into some of the questions we have from your people here. Mm-hmm. What is that like for you and for the industry in general?
So crazy. So this, I'm kind of going to go into my story, I think, a little bit because it all ties together. But my job before this job was line cook. That was my job. So it's going from a line cook, back of house, to basically a manager. And because of the craziness of the pandemic, that's how I ended up in this situation, in this position. I kind of, I had to just learn everything I'm not even going to say in a matter of weeks. It was literally it was days because everything was happening so fast. And there's not really time for there to be a learning curve. So my transition, first of all, it was really fast. It was learning about, HR things like health insurance and taxes and, all that sexy kind of stuff. Really a good time, but important, really important. But yeah, I mean, basically it was just a crazy transition. Payroll too. One of my first things that I was in charge of was paying everyone, which is an incredibly important job. You're talking
that's a big responsibility right there.
Yeah. Yes, it's huge. And I'm not going to lie, in the beginning, oh, sorry, can I curse on this? I'm assuming I can.
Sure, of course.
I fucked up a little bit, and I felt horrible about it because that's people's livelihood. If someone's missing hours or things like that, it deeply affects their lives. And so I've never really been in a position of power like that until now. And so this whole transition has made me respect the front of house and, understand they do get paid more. It is a cushier job, obviously, than back of house, but there are these insane levels of responsibility that come with it. Making sure we don't go bankrupt, making sure that everyone is paid, making sure that we're compliant with normal, Department of Health guidelines, but then now COVID guidelines on top of everything else. So it really has made me learn and appreciate what a manager does and why it's so important. That being said, 100%, 1,000% back of house is a way more difficult job than front of house will ever be. So I do not complain. I will never complain. If I hear a server or, someone like that complaining, I'm like, work the line, go be on the hot fire, and then say how much your job sucks. Because as you know, Andrew, from your story, line cook is the most difficult job in a restaurant. It breaks you mentally, and it breaks you physically. And, so that's 100%, that's a super difficult job. But this managerial job is, as I said, I've learned it's super important. I mean, it's crucial. And that's why the managers get paid a little bit more, and they have a little more perks and benefits, et cetera, et cetera. But I've learned the balance and the appreciation and the necessity for both of those sides. It's been a great learning experience, as crazy as it's been.
Well, I mean, the fact that you can have such a positive attitude. I mean, obviously you're sharing, some of the agony, but in general, one of the things that I've known about you throughout your life is you're fairly, I mean, I would say Hallie is maybe can be less positive sometimes, right? Your sister.
Yeah, even though she's, I don't know, her personality is like changing. She's becoming the positive one. I think that working in the kitchen has made me like a little bit jaded in a lot of ways. But yes, that is true.
And Hallie, if you see this, I absolutely love you. That wasn't. I mean, for goodness sakes, your dad, Led, as we like to call him, or Leadhead even. He could be dark too. I mean, we all have our moments. But one thing about Maya was, even at 8 years old, she would always have this smile on her face, like, everyone's okay, man. And so it's interesting to hear you, and to follow up with my experience. You're talking about being back of house and me being a line cook. Again, we call it a short order cook because you had to get the shit done fast. But,
Yep.
McDonald's was still kind of a thing back then. How could they, fast food, good food fast or whatever. And so everybody expected you. And I cooked out in the diner. So it wasn't as if I was hiding. So if somebody didn't like something, they could tell me directly, which
I see.
Could be good or bad. But how many times has a customer in your restaurant like walked back into the kitchen and said, this food is terrible, or, you overcooked my steak, or,
Yeah. People send food back for various reasons. I think that the most annoying, in my opinion, is food allergies. Super annoying, especially when someone conveniently forgets that they have a food allergy until they get the food. And then they're like, wait, I'm allergic to mushrooms. What is this? I didn't expect mushrooms in my mushroom souffle. What? Like, people do that all the time. Or they have ridiculous allergies. Like, maybe this is a real thing, but a cucumber allergy. And I'm like, it's water, how are you allergic to that? But from the cook's perspective, what that means is we have to make 2 versions of everything. Here's this sauce, gluten-free, regular, vegan, non-vegan. So that's my most annoying thing with customers, I think, is food allergies. They get really deep and they get really crazy.
Well, I mean, there has to be, I want to use this as a transition into a couple of questions, but it has to be, I mean, I have been touring on the road for 30, 35 years, give or take. And I've toured with your dad easily for 10 or 15 years at that time. And, I was vegan and or vegetarian for many of those years. And I was that person. Mm-hmm. I was that, douchebag going, oh, is that with cancel culture? Can I say douchebag? Yeah, whatever. We'll go with it. I'll take the flag.
Yeah.
But, I'm like, is there any fish sauce in the kimchi, or is the risotto? I'm in Italy, in Florence. And is the risotto vegetarian? And they say, yes, there are no vegetables. But then they cook it with meat broth or chicken broth or something. beef broth or chicken broth. So then I have to send it back because I can't have it, man. I don't eat that stuff. It's annoying. I didn't realize it until after the fact when I started eating meat again. I was like, oh yeah, I was that guy. Annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's to a certain extent, it's like you can't be mad at someone for being vegan. That's, that's their thing. This may be controversial, but this is kind of my opinion about it. I feel like if you are vegetarian or vegan, you should go to a vegetarian or vegan restaurant. If you go to a restaurant that's serving meat, et cetera, and then get upset at them because they don't have enough vegan options, it's like they're not really designed to cater to vegans or vegetarians. You have whole restaurants that only serve vegan food, and tons of them now because it's popular. You have whole restaurants that only serve vegan and vegetarian. So I understand the concern, but you also have to understand, like, Italian culture is so meat and dairy based. It's really difficult for them to be vegan. It takes a lot of creativity and extra effort for them to do vegan, good tasting vegan Italian food.
Yeah, I guess, if we want to go down this rabbit hole, you're on tour. So let's say you're playing with, 3 or 4 other people in your band, and then you have sound check, and then the venue or the promoter takes you to the restaurant that they've chosen beforehand that you're eating at, and you're the only vegan. You're kind of stuck, and you have a show in an hour or maybe 2 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's I get what you're saying, and I agree, but excuse me, there's just times where it's not possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I get that too. But it's easier these days, would you say, though? With
100%. Those curveballs that artists throw at the restaurant, that's my experience, is mostly being on tour, are no problem for the restaurants now. They get it. It's really no problem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I have a quick story that I just want to tell you because I thought about it last night or something. I was in Italy. We were filming for the documentary, blah, blah, blah. And the Italian filmmaker, Luca Biocati, took us to this restaurant, and we had like mozzarella and, I'm forgetting what else we had. And I was kind of bitching because I was tired. I had been on the tour, and I was like, I really don't want cheese. I mean, I eat dairy, but whatever. I was just cranky. So then after the meal, he drove and he said, see those cows right there in that field? That's where your mozzarella came from. It was like a mile away, maybe 2 miles or something.
That's beautiful.
Oh, and you see those orange trees? Oh yeah, we had mimosas. That's where your oranges came from. And then he took us to the vineyard, and then to the olive vineyard where we got the olive oil. He goes, all that food you had was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's not just being vegan. Maybe it's about, how the food is sourced. You must know something about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's almost like, you can think about it as the farmers and the producers are artists in their own way. They're, that's part of the whole experience of the meal, is cultivating the actual ingredients. And, it's funny that sounds so crazy and radical to us. Like, whoa, the food that you're eating is grown, right nearby. But it's actually not that crazy, because a lot of, in Italy or another, in Japan, in certain parts of the world where it's more countryside, that's just how they grow their food. It's just crazy to us being in this American bubble, I guess.
So somebody, a friend of mine was in Japan, and they wanted to have sushi, even though they were vegetarian, not vegan. And they were asking all these questions. Now it's an anecdote. Well, is this what they didn't say grass-fed fish, but that's kind of our joke now because, grass-fed beef or whatever. Where's this fish from? And the waiter or whatever is like, yeah, it came from, over there. We just caught it and brought it over here, and we're serving it to you. Yep. And speaking of You lived in Japan and went to culinary school, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You were there for 6 months. And what age were you at that time, Maya?
It was only a couple years ago. I think it was like 2 years ago. So I was like 24, I guess. But it was like 6 months that I was there.
So 24 years old, you're in Japan. Is that the first time you're alone? No, because you went to college, so you were at Penn State alone, right?
Yes, and I've kind of been alone, and I've kind of done the traveling to a new place by myself kind of thing before. I've done it for like internships and things like that. Like I did one in California where I just before I left, I was like, I hope this is real. I kind of had the same thought before this culinary school program because, it was Le Cordon Bleu. I found it online. It was like legit. But at the same time, before I took off on the plane, I was like, I really hope that this isn't a scam because I'm like kind of just flying to Japan right now. But it wasn't. It was real. But yeah, definitely. I've had moments of independence, but going across to the other side of the world by yourself is a new kind of independence. It was pretty crazy.
But
as well.
Doesn't going to Le Cordon Bleu in Japan give you, I don't know, I guess I would use an old school term like a feather in your cap as a chef, or you're not a chef, but as a cook. Isn't this kind of a big deal that you did this?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, so the reason that I wanted to go to culinary school in Japan rather than, I could have gone to like ICC or another, there's amazing culinary schools in New York, obviously. But I just felt like the whole Institute of Culinary School, and you could talk to other chefs about this, is like, in a lot of ways it's bullshit. And a lot of ways it's like kind of just a lot of money that you spend for things that, after you graduate from culinary school, you're going to go start working in a professional kitchen and you're starting from zero. Because the person next to you that never went to culinary school but has been working in kitchens since they were 16, they're going to destroy you in the kitchen. They're going to destroy you. And they don't have formal training. They don't have, they didn't pay $50,000 or whatever, these insane prices of culinary school for this training. But it's real life experience, real world experience that is what really makes you a great cook. I mean, there are things that you can learn from culinary school. There's techniques and there's theories and things like that. With the internet, can you teach yourself all of these things? Yeah, because cooking is a physical skill. You just physically do it. The more you physically do it, the better you get. That's it. So for me, I kind of saw that system. And so I was like, how much value does a degree in French culinary techniques really bring to my life? Meaning, how many other people are in that same position and are going to be entering the workforce with the same degree and starting at the same place, which is the bottom. So I figured, if I'm going to invest this money into culinary school, let me do something that's different. Let me try to really, my desire for it was, yes, to learn about Japanese food, but also to learn about cuisine from an Eastern hemisphere of the world's perspective, which is just completely different. I mean, the way that they look at food, the way they think about food, everything is just different than the culture that we grew up with as Westerners. So that's really why I went to culinary school in Japan.
So here's 2 questions. And can you tell us who this is, your friend, the chef on Instagram?
Yeah. So my friend Cesar Cano, he was a finalist in season 9 of MasterChef, which I was also on. So I got to know him. He is an incredible cook. Follow him on Instagram at Take-san. He's a Mexican chef and really shares his knowledge of, the history of Mexican cuisine. And he's in Houston, Texas. So shout out Cesar.
Cesar, and he's tac_son on Instagram. I'll put the link below.
Yes.
And his question for you is, COVID, without a doubt, has decimated the restaurant industry. Is there any lessons learned or flaws highlighted about the restaurant industry that can be corrected moving forward? How can chefs use this experience to improve the restaurant industry?
I love that question. That's an amazing question. And first of all, I would extend it further than the restaurant industry, of course, to every industry that's been impacted by COVID-19, which is every industry, period. I mean, every industry has been impacted by this. I will say, in the restaurant industry specifically, things that I've seen is, and Pete, that I think that the community has been talking about, is that, you know, restaurants kind of have a reputation of certain things like sexism, racism. You know, it's a really rough environment in the kitchen, so people are kind of just rough with each other. And if you've, first of all, Book Rec is Anthony Bourdain's book. Whether you're a chef or not, I highly recommend that you read this book because it really shows how rough. I mean, that was like the 80s, 90s era of restaurants in New York, which is way rougher than it is now. Although, you know, these things do still exist now. But I would say that because COVID literally is hitting a reset button on the restaurant industry as we know it, how we operate, you know, everything, the whole machine is being reset. So it gives an opportunity for some of these things to, you know, go out the window. There's certain things that you shouldn't be saying at work. You shouldn't be sexist. You shouldn't be racist. That's not cool. And I think that because it's a new and changing world, those kinds of things are actually starting to be implemented, where you're going to get called out and you're going to get, you know, we're going to say something if we hear you being sexist or, you know, touching someone inappropriately or things like that. We're not just going to let that slide anymore. And I think that's part of, like, you know, cancel culture, obviously, Me Too culture, all of that impacting the restaurant industry. But I would say that overall, it's the whole machine is being reset, which means being more PC. For, you know, I know PC, that term has kind of like, people have different opinions about it, you know, going too far or, you know, whatever. But I think that there is a baseline of there's certain things that shouldn't be tolerated in any workplace, kitchens included. And I do think that that is a major impact of COVID is, as these restaurants are going out and being restarted and new restaurants are going to eventually start happening, I really do think that this is the positive impact, is that people are starting a business in PC culture. So there's certain things that are not going to be okay anymore. And hopefully, I hope that includes mental health as well, because that's a huge, huge problem in the culinary industry that's not talked about. So yeah, I would love to see more mental health services being available for, you know, people in this industry. But yeah, that's what I think the changes are mainly is the culture is really going to change.
I think culture in general is pretty safe to say the culture in general is going to change. I mean, I've had this sexism and racism, and I'm going to throw in homophobia in there with pretty much everybody I've spoken to on the podcast so far. And I spoke to my friend, lesbian, super butch. She throws these play parties, and we're talking about from airports to restaurants to just being at a gay bar, has been poked and prodded, or a casino. She has this amazing story about being at a casino, and this security guard, she was going to the women's restroom. He goes, "That's the women's restroom. You're not allowed in there." She goes, "Yeah, I am." Because she looks so butch, right? But people touching her on airplanes, or maybe even just jabbing her, like, you know, you dyke or whatever. It's not even in the restaurant industry. It's in the music business. It's in general in life. You're just trying to take a flight, you know, wherever you're going. And that would be pre-COVID. We're not talking about during COVID that she was traveling. And you're getting this kind of like really, you know, or in my case, you know, friends jokingly calling me faggot, you know, and there's always a little truth in jest. And, you know, not being able to call my record gay disco because, you know, you can't call a record gay disco. And I was like, why not? I'm gay, you know, and it's not really disco, but it's funny. It's fun. I just want to have fun. It's weird. So I think that reset, I was going to ask you to clarify, but you did, is super important. And I personally don't think many of us know what that's going to look like, the reset, whether in your industry or whether it's in the music business, or, you know, when shows and gigs and tours actually come back, if they do in the way that they were. It'll be it'll be intriguing. Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, that's absolutely right. And I am curious how, in addition to our industry, how it's going to impact, you know, every other industry. It's like COVID, you know, here's an example. I'm going to bring up theater because I actually studied theater in school. That's what I was going to do with my life before I became, I transitioned to the culinary industry. Theater is completely devastated right now. You know, I mean, it's any live performance, live music as well. It's just, it's really hard. It's really devastated. But it's the same thing. There are certain things in the theater industry, sexism, racism, all of these kinds of things that exist that I believe once theater, gets reset and once we start doing productions again, that I think because of this COVID reset, it's going to change. I mean, that's really what I believe. Film industry, every industry, it's kind of like this whole pandemic propelled our world into the future. And it's also going to change what theater looks like. I don't know what that's going to be yet. I'm really concerned about the future of the theater industry. Being that our world is becoming more isolated and socially distanced, or live performance. I mean, to a certain extent, people are missing it, and there's that feeling in their soul of being in a room with people making art live in front of you that people are missing. But at the same time, I do think that our world is really changing and becoming more isolated. So I don't know what theater in 2022 or whatever it is looks like. But yeah, that's kind of my point. Is every industry is forced to be pushed into the future. Even in restaurants, we're developing. Everything is on a website now. We have physical menus, but we don't really hand them out because everything is contact free. So is that going to go away when COVID is gone? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that Asian, when I was in Japan, Asian countries have been doing this where you actually just order, when you're sitting at a table, you order from a little tablet. You have no contact with the server at all. They just bring you your food. So that direction. You see it at McDonald's too now, where it's contactless. So right. Our world is totally moving in that direction.
What I've been going to Norway since the early 2000s and doing shows and so forth. And there was this doesn't exist. This, I'll call it a restaurant, but we're in Scandinavia, cafe restaurant, very cool place with the performance stage and everything downstairs. They already had that going on. I mean, you did not order from a waiter or waitress. And it was old school. It was like a big kind of, looked like a calculator, and you would order your food or coffee or whatever you wanted, and it would just kind of show up at your table. Mm-hmm. And so I think on some level, at least in the States and maybe in a few other places, we're just kind of being forced to, wake up. I don't know. That would be my statement in general, is that the pandemic, and I would never speak for the restaurant industry. I don't really have any idea other than what you've told me and Jeremiah and my own nephew, but we're just being forced to wake up. Like, things need to change. And I think it's true in the music industry too. Things just need to shift. And if you're not going to do it on your own, this pandemic and this environment will do it for you. And hopefully, conspiracies aside, hopefully it's not some kind of like dark, government control kind of thing that's going on, hopefully. But that's a whole topic.
Let's not even get into that.
Right. So the other thing is you've talked about you maybe addressed this, but I'm going to ask it because it comes from your pops. So I'm going to ask it because I respect that he wanted to know. How has the pandemic transformed the restaurant and food industry in a more positive way?
Positive way. I would say, well, I guess I would say, first of all, is everything that I've already talked about with the actual culture and, determining what's okay, what's not okay at work. That's a huge part of it, I think, moving forward. I think that, something that you're seeing right now because of the pandemic is restaurants are essentially, there's more and more of them doing things like meal kits. And there's actually a ton of restaurants that are essentially becoming like grocery stores. They're selling, they're creating their own products and they're selling products. And in a way that's kind of like, more artisanal and independent makers are creating products. And there's websites like Goldbelly where restaurants can actually ship out their meals across the country. So you can get, you can be living in Idaho and get a Katz's pastrami sandwich sent to you. So there's innovation like that that's happening right now. Even though that company was around before COVID, they blew up as a result of COVID. So that's an example is where the restaurant industry is shifting and changing to fit the new demands of the world. And I think that meal kits are going to be, they're already huge, but they're going to be even bigger because people are, another thing is working from home culture is a thing now, Sure. Past COVID, people are realizing, why are we, paying rent for these office spaces when we could have people be doing this stuff from home? Right. So that's going to be a thing now. People are going to be staying home more. And, like I said, isolation is, for better or for worse, that's kind of the direction their world is heading in. So, having something sent to your door, having something be convenient for you. I think that, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of restaurants, the ones that are still out here and still surviving, that's what a lot of them are doing, is they're creating products and they're creating meal kits. And obviously delivery is a huge thing right now. I mean, God, it blew my mind when this thing first happened, and I'm seeing Michelin star restaurants, omakases, all these things doing takeout, omakase meals, or takeout, 3 Michelin star packages. You can get a Michelin star meal delivered to your house. And that's crazy because, fine dining is essentially theater. There's the value right there. There's the, $600 it's walking in, having the white tablecloth, the service, physically being there, the music that they play, all of it is part of this theater piece that is fine dining.
Yeah. And the service and, yeah, all of it.
All of it. So to see that model being transformed into a, here's a takeout is crazy. I mean, actually fine dining has been deeply impacted by this. The places that are doing pretty well are, places that can do delivery, places that in March when we all had to shut down and be takeout delivery only, they survived. I mean, we survived because we have an amazing takeout and delivery. That's huge. If you're a super fancy, schwanky, Michelin star restaurant, how are you going to pay your rent when you're closed? So yeah, that's kind of the trends that I'm seeing in a lot of restaurants is, catering to the isolation, the direction of isolation that our world is heading in. Hopefully, I hope that changes, in 2021 or whenever things get back to whatever our new normal is. But I do think that that's going to be a huge increase. You're going to see more restaurants creating products and meal kits and things like that.
Cool story. And this, if I do my math right, I moved to New York in 1986. Okay. And I lived on Ludlow Street, which is about a half a block from Katz.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can remember going there, getting a pastrami sandwich and one of those big pickles and everything, and just being like, man, I'm like a little white boy from Seattle. I'd never experienced that. And then the second one is on the tip of the whole delivery takeout, which I think is different. I'd love for you to define the difference, but unless it's the same. But it's like Baldor Foods, started delivering. And because their industry disappeared. And one of my friends, we have a family farm. And one of my friends also has a family farm in Idaho, and he just grows potatoes for French fries for the restaurant industry. Okay, we're talking about, 1 million potatoes, 3 million, whatever, pick your number. It was a lot of potatoes. And during the pandemic, there's, early on, he just couldn't sell them. And you can't recrop if you leave them underground. You have to wait 3 years and turn the soil before you can crop again. So he basically had to burn 1 million potatoes. I mean, that's the number he used, but whatever number, that's a lot of potatoes. But he was devastated. His farm was not usable. He's since come up with a frozen French fry that I don't remember the brand, but this was had an impact on the restaurants, but then on the food chain and the food supply. And then my cousins who are ranchers, they're like, we can't buy your cattle right now because we have nobody to sell it to. And our crops are coming in. What is it today? December 1st. Our crops are coming in this week. So it'll be interesting to see how we can sell them, if at all,
It's that's the kind of stuff that you don't at first think about, but when you're in this industry, you see it. I mean, our vendors are hurting. Our vendors are really hurting. And, whatever I don't know what the exact statistic is, but I want to say like definitely over half of restaurants are closed. I mean, I think it's half or something like that. It's a really high, really high percentage of restaurants. And when you think about how that affects all the vendors that used to supply these restaurants, I mean, and it's like you said, you're dealing with products like potatoes or, products that go bad. Their entire business is just destroyed. It's really destroyed. So we're still using our vendors. We're still trying to, support them. But of course, we're only at 25% capacity. We're not going to order the same amount of food that we were ordering before. Every restaurant is right now, if they're open. So it's messed up. It just has an impact on the farmers, on everyone. It's really tough. It's really hard to see the vendors dealing with that, especially the small vendors. Like Baldor is a huge company, but I really feel for, those smaller independent vendors that I just don't know what they're going to do. And it's scary. It's really scary.
All right. So you have gotten a little darker, more real.
I know. I was just,
it's all right. It's all right.
It was going to get dark at one point. We're talking about the pandemic.
but the thing is that I remember, again, I'm making this so I can crop it out if I want in the final edit. But early on in the pandemic, one of my friends said, you have to order from Baldor. They used to be restaurant only, service, but since there's no business, you have to order $200 or more of food.
Yeah.
And so I ordered 2 canned tomatoes, 2 things of pasta, a thing of garlic, I don't know, a bunch of other kimchi and some stuff. But I didn't realize it was, restaurant size. Yep. The guy came with the hand truck, and like I got 2 huge boxes. I still have it, from March or April, whenever that was. I still have. I wish I had a can I could hold it because I'm like,
yes,
the pasta, huge boxes of pasta, and I was like, I'm gonna be eating pasta for. And I mean, I love pasta, but and God bless Baldor. They are super nice people. My friend ended up helping them with their website because their website sucked because they weren't ready to handle
absolutely
a consumer.
Yeah, it's a whole new market.
Correct.
Yeah.
So God bless them, and they're really trying to up their game with the food delivery to consumers instead of restaurants. But I don't think most people, Maya, when they sit down to a meal, think about the longevity of that tomato or that potato or that piece of lettuce, how it arrived on your plate is pretty fucking unbelievable if you really go down that rabbit hole.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And, I think that was one of the lessons too that I learned being in Japan. Because, as you were saying in your story earlier, example, I went to this was my favorite meal that I had in all of Japan. So I went to this place called Naoshima, and it's really cool. It's kind of known as like an art island. So they have a ton of galleries, and it's its own little like community. So you rent a bike and you kind of just bike around the island and you go from gallery to gallery. It's really awesome.
That's so
really
cool.
It's a very cool place. But so I went there and, I was having like just a basic meal. All I got was, which is very typical Japanese, just a piece of grilled fish, just salt in the fish, miso soup, pickles, rice, just a very
making me hungry.
I'm making myself hungry. But yeah, so, I just ordered that, and then it arrived. And first of all, it was just so stunningly beautiful and well presented. And the taste, like really, it was the best. It was like one of my top meals of my life, and definitely top meal in Japan. And, the fish, I was asking about the meal, and the fish, as you said, they were like, we got it right over there. We caught it this morning off the island, and the vegetables, everything they really, really make themselves. And that makes you realize like, wow, this, knowing where your food came from is it has such a powerful impact on the food, because like I said, that fish was just salt. It was just salt in the fish. And it was really the most delicious thing I've ever had, because you can like taste that the fish is not sitting in a cage, like you can, I think that you can really taste things like that. I noticed that difference with things like,
I agree.
You can almost like taste the torture and the bad energy when you eat something that's like mass produced or from a non-sustainable environment. Like I really feel like you could kind of taste the torture of that animal.
So can I interrupt you just because I wanted to ask you about this, and it wasn't on our list, but this has been pretty typical for my podcast where we just kind of go off the chart. Okay. But it's the intention, and it's not just the intention of, like you said, some kind of cruelty or abuse to an animal or even a vegetable while it's being grown. But when a chef or somebody is preparing food, with the energy they're putting into it, and then and I'm going to go out on a limb with my intuition. Your friend here, the Mexican chef, has really great energy. Like he asked a tough question, but it was out of love. He wasn't, being a troll or something. It was like, that's a really nice question. Yeah. Not easy, but sometimes I think, at least me coming up, my mom was making food just like, fuck, I got to make dinner for the kids. It wasn't, this is so lovely, and I'm going to make them pasta and, gravy or tomato sauce, whatever you want to call it. It was like, fuck, I have to cook for the kids and they got to eat, so I got to do this. And that's the energy that you receive. Yeah. Do you agree with that, or are you just nodding your head yes?
No, 100%. And, for me, sometimes when I cook, and I think that other people that cook can relate, I can literally, like, sometimes I angry cook. And when I angry cook, that's when, like, I'm trying to do a dough or something, and it just, like, fucks up, and it just keeps fucking up, and I have to throw it out and start. And I get, maybe you relate to this with music as well. I just put some angry energy into it. I just put, it's like not good energy. And then when you taste it, you can taste the bad energy. And it's weird, but it's something that I've noticed. Also, another point I wanted to make, going back to my training in Japan, this is another reason why I wanted to learn from the Eastern philosophy and from Japan, is they have ingrained in their culture and in their religion, actually, is a really, really deep respect for life and for food, because they believe that God exists in everything, in nature. That's like kind of the basis of Shintoism, which is the older Japanese religion. But that's where there's a saying called itadakimasu, and you say that before you eat. It's kind of like, let's eat or enjoy, whatever. But what it really means is thank you to the life that was sacrificed in order for us to nourish our body.
That's beautiful.
And, that's the foundation of Japanese cuisine right there, is, whether it be a fish, whether it be a vegetable, whatever it is, that's alive. That's something that's living and thriving, and it's being sacrificed in order for you to get stronger and to nourish yourself. So I think that sometimes that philosophy can be lost in the American audience. We just see food, you see it packaged in a grocery store. It's just, there's unlimited amounts of food, and you don't really think about it. You're always distracted when you're eating, you're watching something, or you're watching a TikTok or whatever it is, you're answering an email. You don't really take that time to even just sitting and saying itadakimasu, like, thank you to, to this fish or to this cow or to this, carrot, whatever it is. Thank you for sacrificing yourself in order for me to nourish myself.
And I would say that thank you, Maya, for taking the time to be here and give people an inside view of what it means to provide, because I feel as though a lot of us, and I've been there in my life too, where I just want to go to a restaurant. I just want my fucking food. I don't want to get the fuck out of there. I don't even think about any of this stuff. As I've aged, I have changed. I'm like, oh my God, where did that leaf of lettuce come from? Where did that fish come from? Where did those potatoes, I keep using potatoes and tomatoes, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Where did anything come from, and how is it growing? Who picked it? Who harvested it? Who packaged it? How, is it a machine? Is it done with love? And all of that intent. And, that's one thing that I believe that, I've played way more with your father, Jeff Lederer, more than I played with your mom, Maya Rose, meaning just actual performance. But your dad, I know when he's cranky and I know when he's happy. I know I can hear it in the music. And I'm sure he can say the same about me. And it's the same for anything that has energy. And this is our sustenance. And it's just one of the things, I'm going to be a total talk show dick right now and just be like, all right, so I'm talking to your dad, and we were talking about your grandma, La Rosa, right? She was an amazing woman. This is Maya's mom's mother, who lived to be like 8,000 years old and was this short, amazing Italian woman who took no flack. She just did not. If I was giving Mary, grief, your mom grief in front of her, you don't talk to my daughter like that, like that kind of thing. Did she teach you anything, your grandmother, about food?
Oh my God, yes. Everything. I feel like this is how a lot of people got their start to food, but definitely, cooking alongside my grandmother, and being Italian as well, having a lot of pride in our heritage. My grandmother came here when she was about 8 years old. And so she's like a true immigrant. She was a true immigrant. So, the idea of taking her culture, where she comes from in Italy, and for her to pass that down to me, I kind of feel like she's definitely taught my mom a lot of stuff, but I really feel like this was kind of the generational skip of like, let me teach all of my, culinary things to you, because I've always been interested in cooking and food since I was really, really young. But, it's not just Italian culture, it's actually Italian American subculture, which is very different. And I think Like people don't realize that, but she, in a lot of ways, you know, she never made homemade pasta. She never made, you know, anything like that. She was cooking for a bunch of kids with very little money. And she was trying to, you know, that's actually the immigrant mentality, is that's where Italian American food comes from. You know, stretching it out. And, you know, I had the opportunity to go to Calabria, where she's from, and see where she grew up. It was literally like the tiniest little shack. It was crazy. I mean, it was really, really tiny. And wow. To see her coming from there and, you know, having that immigrant story of coming in through Ellis Island and making it in America and starting a family, and, you know, the success of my family is, it's just amazing. And yeah, but that's what she taught me really, is like a lot of our Italian heritage. And even if it's not specific recipes, it's kind of the way that you think about food and the flavor profiles that you would match together. So that kind of stuff has always really stuck with me, even though I taught myself how to make pasta. She never taught me how to make pasta because she didn't have time for that. She was raising kids. She didn't have time to make pasta.
Right. So I guess the inflection I got was that your grandma didn't actually teach you how to cook. She just showed you how to cook. And
yeah.
I mean, she wasn't sitting in the kitchen going, and 2 tablespoons of butter, or, you know, and 1 pinch of salt. She was just probably sharing. Well, let's go back to culture, because that's been a big subject over the last few weeks on this podcast. Making up words. And so it seems like it was more of an inflection than an actual, this is the spoon you should use, or this is the pot you should use, or these are, you know, just, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more so like I think that I got comfortable with Italian flavors and techniques. Like I didn't go to Italian culinary school in the way that I went to Japanese culinary school. It's something, these flavor profiles are things that are just ingrained in me. And another like kind of interesting tangent, like just this kind of weird thing that I've noticed about myself is, so I taught myself how to make pasta. My grandma never taught me how to make pasta. I've never even seen her make pasta. She doesn't have time for that. So when I was doing it, I've kind of had this like really weird, like almost spiritual experience where I can almost feel like my ancestors' hands.
Wow.
Being my hands. I know that sounds really trippy and crazy, but
it sounds beautiful to me.
Even when I was in Japan and I was learning soba and udon and these kind of like Japanese noodles, I was like, not for nothing, I was kind of like killing it. I was kind of like doing really, really well in the class. And and I've never done it before. It was like my hands were just doing what, like ancestrally, what they know how to do. Even
like
though I've
DNA, it was like in your DNA or your genes or something.
Yeah. I really believe that. It's like, it's kind of crazy. You don't think about it and your hands just know what to do. It was a super crazy experience.
I do think about these things because I believe that my saxophone and my music has this energy and this spirit that comes from my ancestors. And I have no, deliverable or diatonic proof of that. So I don't talk about a lot because I don't really want to defend myself, but I can tell you that when I make music, I am channeling or something. The energy of my family is just like, yeah, man, keep creating, And so I 100% am there. And there's one question that I didn't send to you that I want to ask you. Maybe in conclusion, is that cool if we finish up now?
Yeah, I have to work.
What?
I'm actually like in the middle I'm working, so yeah.
Yeah, well, after you get famous, you open your own place. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. All right, so from the family, how do you properly kill an eel for the 7 fishes dinner? So
the reason that my family asked this question is, so if you don't, I know that you know, Andrew, but if anyone watching doesn't know.
I don't know.
I know that you know because you're Italian. There's a deep tradition of 7 fishes on Christmas Eve. That's what we do for, 7 fishes represent the 7 sacrifices, and it's very religious in its origin. But so my family, every year we go to only Italian, which is, that's my grandmother again, maybe immigrant mentality of Italians stick with their own. Go to only the Italian fish market, and which there's only like a few left. I think it's in like Bensonhurst, and that area really has changed obviously with time. But so there's this like one Italian fish market that's left in that area. And, whenever we're there waiting in line, something that you always hear is them smacking the eel, because that's how the Italians have decided to kill eel, is they just take it and they whack it on the table. So like right on the head. And like, that's the Italian way of killing eel. Although I have learned in Japan, the Japanese way of killing eel is very different. There's actually a special cutting board that has a little round wooden part, like circle on it. And there's a tool, I think it's called meuchi, and I think it has to do with eye, the word for eye, because you stick the eel on it, you put a spike right through the eye, and it kind of like, I guess that kind of like stabilizes it, and you're able to fillet it like right on the cutting board with it being attached through its eye. So, I hope that didn't get too graphic.
Are you kidding? I mean, comparatively, I think that, we've been living through this, hailstorm for the last 4 years with this person running our country. Like, I would rather hear about how you butcher an animal, whether it's a fish, an eel. Is an eel a fish? Or otherwise, crop anything or harvest anything, than worry about, because people need to know this stuff. Because there may come a day when we have to actually go out and forage. And whether you forage for vegetables or mushrooms or, you're hunting, it's possible those days may be upon us at some point. And if anybody's like, ew, that's gross, I'm like, you know what? The McDonald's hamburger you had, you want to know how that cow was taken care of? Or that bacon you had for breakfast, you want to know how that was taken care of? Or those eggs that you're eating? And I'm not saying all of it. It's not all darkness, but, there's some pretty weird stuff that goes on. And I think we've walked around with our eyes closed. I would like to say not me and not Maya, but a lot of us have just been like, wow, I had a hamburger. Okay, so how was that animal raised? How was it butchered? How was it delivered to you? How was it delivered to the restaurant? And to me, this stuff is all fascinating, but also very important. Yes. And it needs to be loved. It needs to be done with positivity and with respect, as you were saying with the Japanese. Yes. And on a final note, my grandma, my Sicilian grandma, Grandma Philomena, Grandma Phil, we called her. She goes, marinara. She goes, when I was a kid, it was pretty much just everything in the fridge. It's like whatever you had went in the tomato sauce. Celery, carrots, onions, whatever you had, you just threw it all in there and put pasta and you ate it.
Yep.
Is that fair?
One of my favorite Italian dishes is pasta puttanesca, which translates to little whore because it has a little bit of everything in her. So that's how I think every culture has a dish like that.
Well, there was
but that's where it comes from. That's what it means.
All right, so puttanesca. But my grandma would just make this pasta, or the sauce, the gravy, as the American Italians like to call it, and she would just throw everything in there.
Yeah,
including the kitchen sink. And she would have a cigarette lit in every room of the house. So I'm sure there were some ashes in there too. She smoked palm olives, and she's smoking, making the sauce, Andrew. Like, I'm okay. And it was so good though. It took her all day, and she was fun. But anyway, do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to tell the world?
Yeah. I guess if I may, I hope this is okay. A couple little.
I can always cut it out, man. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, so first off, if you're in the West Village area, I work at an amazing restaurant called N Japanese Brasserie. We are open for outdoor and indoor dining. We're open for takeout and delivery. It's a really, really beautiful and special restaurant. I'm very proud to work here. So if you are looking for a place to experience some authentic, real Japanese food, we also have private dining rooms, which I was just in, which is very COVID safe. Please stop on by. Our website is enjb.com. And shameless plug number 2, the Independent Restaurant Coalition. If you are looking for a place to donate, I think that today's actually Giving Tuesday.
It is.
So
yes.
If you're looking for a place to donate, this organization has been supporting restaurants that are going through this crisis right now. It's been really tough on everyone. So please consider donating to them. And also, what they're really trying to do is get government assistance because, this next phase, it's looking like, my opinion, it's looking like a lockdown is around the corner. I don't understand how restaurants are going to survive this. I mean, the first round was tough enough. For us to have a second round of lockdown with no government assistance at all is, frankly, it's insane. It's insane. So we need government financial assistance to continue to employ people, to continue to stay open. So consider checking them out and reaching out to your senators. This is really important. Restaurants employ is one of the highest employers in the U.S. We employ a ton of Americans, so it really impacts a lot of American lives. So please consider checking them out as well.
So thank you, Maya. And if I can ask, I realize I'm a clarifier. Can you clarify? And even if people, try to check you on the internet, you say that the restaurant industry is one of the biggest employers in the U.S. Yeah. Is that fair? That's what you said. So what is that? Give me a number. I mean, what are we talking about here?
I mean, I might have to Google it. I don't want to quote a incorrect fact, but I mean, think about it. Think about being an artist. Think about that stereotype of moving to New York and being a waiter. Artists are employed by restaurants, right. Restaurants employ, they're definitely one of the highest employing industries in the United States. So that's why it's so crucial. I mean, everyone knows someone that's in the industry, I feel like, that's impacted by this. And like I said, artists specifically, a lot of us have worked as, waiters or line cooks or whatever it is. We've been a part of this industry. So it impacts a ton of people, like a ton. So it's important to get government help.
Right. And fair enough. Details aside, I mean, whether you're on the industry side, you're as a cook or a chef or a front of house, back of house, waiter, waitress. I mean, who hasn't been out to eat? I mean, who hasn't experienced, and especially in New York City, and it's getting broader, but you can just go on and orders from Seamless or delivery.com or Grubhub, or Caviar, and you can just have shit delivered to your house. I mean, we've all been, participating in this exchange of food. People need food.
That's right.
And so no matter what the actual figure is or percentage of Americans that are, participating in the food industry, it doesn't matter because, somebody could be eating Chinese takeout or, Thai food or whatever they're eating or Italian takeout while they're watching this episode. So you're participating.
Yes.
And if we go back into lockdown, by the way, aren't we in lockdown or am I wrong? I thought we already are right now. Again.
I will say this, indoor dining is still open. Outdoor dining is still open.
I thought Cuomo would nixed all that. Am I wrong?
I think that we're days away from hearing an update. And, that's the thing. Us in the restaurant industry, we're living we're living on edge day by day. It's a new piece of, guidelines or news, or you can or can't do this. Sustainable food, that's not sustainable food. And, I think we're going to get an update soon, but I do think that's the direction that we're heading in. I'm pretty positive. So
let's do, let's just timestamp this. We're recording on December 1st, 2020 with Maya. So whenever you're watching this, you'll know that we are in the middle of the pandemic still. In fact, I think we're not in the middle. We've surpassed the middle. We're like at something crazy.
It kind of feels like we're in our second wave, and we're kind of peaking on top of what is already our second wave. So it's just, I check the COVID numbers in New York every day. It's bad. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's really bad.
I talked to this boy in Norway yesterday, Matthias, who's going to come on. He's a really great artist, a little younger than you. And yeah, he's hot. But anyway, and he's like, you should come to Norway for, Christmas. And I was like, dude, we can't go anywhere. I mean, first of all, I would love to come to Norway and see you for Christmas. Thank you for the invitation. But he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, we just had like 14 billion cases yesterday, or I'm making, but it's like, yeah. And they're not, the US is not giving the rest of the world the information. Even with social media, I talked to another friend of mine in Norway. I talked to a friend in Denmark last week. I spoke to this other trumpet player, Norwegian, Simon. And he's like, we have no idea what's going on there with COVID and the elections. I was like, really? Because it's all over for us, right? So I think things like this are important, not just because of COVID, but hearing about the restaurant industry. And the next time you go out to eat, folks, you know what the fuck? Appreciate what's going on here. Appreciate all the energy and effort. Go ahead. Yeah.
And one more note, when you go out to eat, let's all remember pandemic tipping is higher than regular tipping. Meaning, whatever that means to you, obviously you should, be within your own financial means. But I know that when I get coffee to go or, an order to go, I'm tipping 20%. If I'm using a waiter or a server, I'm tipping at least 25%. That's my personal, percentages. But remember that these people are essential workers. They're putting themselves at risk and their families at risk to, to serve you and to financially support them. So, the tipping system is fucked up in itself, but that's a whole other conversation. But since we're in the system, make sure that your pandemic tipping, which is higher than your regular tipping.
I mean, I'm always at 20%. And I saw I think it was Reddit, where they were talking about we should tip, during the pandemic. I've always tipped at 20%, not always. Okay. But I've been in the industry and I'm like, it's a drag when somebody gives you 50 cents you buy a cup of coffee, come on. I mean, really? I mean, at least give me $1. And the other day I got a burger deluxe from the bodega, this guy, Muhammad. And I hadn't been there in a while. And I was like, I'll just support him. And I put it in the oven to heat it up to kill any whatever, if there was anything. And they only charged, I think it's $8.99 for the burger and fries, whatever. And I just gave him $10. I was like, thank you for being open, and thank you. It's like, hey, Andrew, no, man. I mean, we got to take care of each other, Yes. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but the whole idea of you earning a living wage based on if someone found you pleasing or not is fucked up. But it is.
Go ahead, Maya. Speak your truth, man.
I mean, it has its roots in like slavery and there's a whole root of the whole tipping culture that's extremely messed up. But this is the culture that we're living in. So tip your servers like 25%. If it's the way I see it, I'm throwing an extra like, $2 or $3 or whatever it is. It's really not going to financially hurt me to do this.
Correct.
So just do it, just do it right now.
So what about I agree, by the way. I mean, I hope that came through in my commentary with you, my conversation. But what about this whole Seamless, Grubhub? I think Grubhub owns Seamless at this point, or Caviar, and even
Grubhub and Seamless are one. Caviar and DoorDash are one.
Right.
Grubhub and Seamless.
And so when we're working through them, so let's say, you and I hung up and I order, I don't know, a burrito. I actually feel like ordering a burger and fries now that we've been talking about it. But, those companies aren't relatively distributing the money, honestly, right? Fair enough?
Yes. So actually there was a little bit of, back in March when we went on full lockdown, we're relying only on takeout and delivery, right? So these companies have been getting away with this for a long time, where they charge a crazy commission to the restaurants on top of everything else. Some of them were like 30%, which means that we have to mark our items up super high to be able to cover their commission cost. So back at the beginning of lockdown, that was happening, and it was just crazy because we were having to charge so much just for it to make financial sense for us. So actually, de Blasio passed this bill that now they're capped at 15%. All the delivery sites are capped at 15%, which is as it should be, because they were, in the beginning, they were making bank off of the pandemic. All these delivery sites were just making so much money.
So wait a minute, Maya, break it down for us, because everybody's heard this shit on Twitter and social media in general, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying they're making bank. So break it down. I order ramen, okay? Which I did early in the pandemic for my place called Slope Ramen. So it's on 7th Avenue. Do you know that? Oh, Poke Ramen. It's called Poke Ramen. P-O-K. With a thing. Anyway, $30. It was, I think the total with tip was $31 and some cents for a bowl of ramen, kimchi ramen. Very good. 2 meals I got out of it. And so out of that $30, we're talking probably April, maybe early May. And I reheated it in case there was any germs on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So of that, let's just round it off. Of that $30 with a 20% tip, where's the money like landing? Like how much does Grubhub get? How much does the restaurant get? How much is that motherfucker that's riding that stupid electric bike, which is a whole other conversation, because it's a really annoying, but whatever. I know it's not an easy gig, so I'm not going to rag on them. But there's long question, but if you feel like answering it, I'd be interested.
And this is something that I've learned switching into the management side, not being a line cook. You don't realize.
I gotta leave camera for a second, but I have my headphones on. I just have something I have to do. Keep talking, and I'm listening. Okay. I'll just zoom in on your part of the screen for this part. Okay. But I think people will be very interested.
Yeah, no, this is important. So first of all, like I said, off the top, what you're considering is the commission percentage, which used to be 30%. So whatever your item costs, 30% of that is going to Grubhub or whatever it is. So that's a huge chunk right off the top.
So if 30% of $30, 30% is what?
3. Oh my God, I'm terrible at math. That's got to be 3 though.
Well, that's 10%. So
10 times. Oh, I'm so bad at math.
So $9 is going to Grubhub.
9. There you go. 10 3. 9. So there you go. That's huge. $9 off of that. That's huge. But then it goes deeper than that, because before you even get to the delivery site price, you're starting with your food cost, right, which is the base cost. Then you're factoring in labor. You're factoring in the electricity that it takes to run, to keep the restaurant open. You're factoring in, when I say labor, I'm talking about paying everyone,
Yeah, right.
All of these costs are factored into that price that you see at the restaurant menu. So even before we get to Grubhub, Seamless, et cetera, when you see, something on a restaurant menu that you might think, oh, this is really expensive for like some scallops or a steak or whatever it is, you have to remember that you're factoring in all of these other costs to your food item. And you have to make a profit too. You can't break even, you have to make money. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So it's basically your food costs, meaning all of those factors factored into it, plus your commission, plus your like credit card processing fee, or sometimes there's like a service fee. Each delivery system is different. But yeah, basically, like I said, my awakening moment, being more of a managerial role, is learning that there are so many other factors that go into that final price. And our goal is always to keep it as low as possible. But at the same time, we have to make a profit. So that's exactly why you end up paying $30 for ramen when it maybe didn't cost that much for noodles and pork and whatever the raw material is.
But I think that one thing that, at least in my research, and which is part of the reason I started this podcast, because I've been we'll have this discussion about the music business and, what it takes to get me or your dad or your mom or anybody over to Europe to do a show.
Yep.
And what happens is, as far as I understand, also in the restaurant, especially delivery, is if Grubhub is taking $9, oh my God, we should probably do that on a calculator in case somebody wants to fucking jump up our butts. But I think not. So $21, and then the restaurant takes a cut, and then dude's got to, or dudette has to, buy this electric bike and then deliver it. And then that 20% tip is still only $6 on $30. So, and then there's some kind of fee taken out of that. Like by the time it's all done, who loses? I mean, who's getting cut out of this?
Well, the answer is who's winning is the delivery services. They're winning.
Right. Like
big. That's why I'm saying that they make insane amounts of money through the pandemic. It's before it helps this 15%, cap on it. But, that's still 15%. You still have to factor that in. I think that, not that these companies are going to be morally right. I think the right thing to do would have been to maybe waive that commission fee while restaurants are struggling. And
right? Like, that's what you would do is say, Grubhub should say, you know what? Like Bandcamp, and I know there's actually people who don't know what Bandcamp is, but it's a great place to buy music. But, they could have said, you know what? Let's just help the restaurants and order your food, and we're just going to waive our fee because, I actually know one of the guys who started Grubhub, which is interesting. But he had this idea years ago in the 90s. And it's exploitive. And it's I try to, at least since this is my show, I try to avoid those blanket statements like, well, they're just like making money hand over fist. I'm like, yeah, we've all heard that, but let's look at it. So you're buying this, and this is actually what the restaurant's getting, and I'm repeating myself, but it's important because when you're doing that, you could call your favorite ramen place and say directly, although I know it's annoying because it's great to order online because you don't have to talk to anybody, right? But it's much better to call Maya's restaurant or Jeremiah, call Della.
But here's another factor, though. Yes, that's another important thing to remember, that if there is an option for the restaurant to deliver internally, you should always take that option. That's going to be the best for the restaurant. However, it's not every restaurant does that, because there's insurance that you have to get, and there's a whole other, kind of set of hoops that you have to jump through to be able to deliver internally. You have to have staff to be able to deliver only. So not there's the convenience of Grubhub and Seamless and all these sites, which is in a way, it's a good thing that we don't have to provide delivery drivers. But if there ever is a restaurant that is doing delivery internally, you should always go for that option, because that's going to be better for the restaurant.
Describe to us quickly, Maya, what you mean by internally. I don't know what that means.
So meaning that we hire our own delivery drivers. You order through either through calling the restaurant or through like a website. There's some that do that. And it's not a caviar driver or a seamless driver. It's a driver coming from the actual restaurant that's hired by them.
Got it.
There's no commission fee on that. That's why it's better for the restaurant.
No commission fee. What does that mean?
Meaning
pub
that
fee or caviar fee?
That 30% that we were talking about, that's eliminated when you order directly from the restaurant. But not every restaurant does it, so, you know.
Right. So that's something for people to consider. And then we could tie it in. As you said, you have to get back to work. And that's amazing. I haven't worked in 9 months. I mean, I've been doing this and other things, but it's interesting to think about. So God bless you. But you could tie that into Spotify or these streaming services where fucking people like your dad, I'm sure, has been feeling it like,
yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been lucky. I put out a new record during the pandemic, and for whatever reason, people have been celebrating it, and buying it. But it's just like, you know, my $1.89 check from Spotify. I'm like, really?
Yeah, yeah.
When that check used to be $3 to $8, $5, $6 grand, depending back in the day, you know, on sales. But it's just so depressing. But on the other side, people don't know this stuff. They're not thinking about it.
No, they don't. They have no idea. They have no idea.
Right. So that's something that I would like to bring awareness to. And when I talk to Jeremiah, I would like him to talk about it. I mean, he said the business at the wine shop has been through the roof since March and April. And
yeah,
he goes, I don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but I said, how's business, man? He goes,
become quite popular.
He goes, I don't know. People were coming in and buying cases of wine and everything. And I don't know if I should celebrate that or not, but you know, it's been great for business.
I mean, you know, we all cope how we cope, you know? But yeah, I mean, I think that they do delivery as well, which is amazing. Yeah, it's a good business to be in right now.
Right. All right. Thank you, Maya Lederer. I think we really should conclude here. We could probably go on for hours.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have you back on. I'll post the video and see if people want to engage with you about other aspects of your life.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And I'm going to put your TikTok in below the video so Maya does these great TikTok videos and where she cooks and prepares food. And thank you so much. And I love your parents. I love your mom and dad so much.
Thank you. We all love you, and I love you.
I love you too. All right, Maya, talk to you later, okay?
Bye. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Constant Constance. Tune in every week for new conversations. And if you want even more, check out Andrew's Patreon for more exclusive content and additional conversations. Hosted and produced by Andrew D'Angelo. Edited and mixed by Lucy Little. Original music by Andrew D'Angelo and Maximilian Moore D'Angelo. Intro is Henrietta Weeks. Thanks so much. See you next time.
You fucking rocked it. Like she doesn't know she says podcast, right? Like she doesn't even